Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, another special edition of the Terrible Podcast, Pittsburgh Steelers Training Camp 2026. I am Dave Bryan from SteelersDepot.com, and with me, as usual, the one, the only, Alex Kozora, fresh off of yet another trip out to Saint Vincent College in Latrobe to watch the Pittsburgh Steelers conduct what I believe is their 13th training camp practice of this offseason. There is one more remaining that is open to the public on Monday. He's, of course, is going to be there for that. And the weather held out on this Sunday, and today is Sunday, August the 16th. We're recording this at 5:15 p.m. Eastern time. So with that, feels like a Monday, but it is Sunday. Happy Sunday, Alex.
Happy Sunday, Dave. We danced around the raindrops today. It rained before practice, a little bit during, but just a little shower. And then I think it stormed just a couple hours ago. So glad to avoid all of that and get a good quality day of practice in for training camp, Dave.
All right, we got enough that we're actually going to be able to go position group by position group and get your thoughts on several things that you observed today. And it sounds like it was a little bit more spirited practice today. We'll talk a little about that a little bit as well. And for those listening, we are going to be recording the regular version of the Terrible Podcast for the Monday morning show later on tonight. And we'll probably have that one hit the internet or be uploaded by about midnight Eastern time. So just in case you're listening to this, you want to turn around and potentially listen to another one, look for that to drop at midnight. All right, Alex, as we do the housekeeping portion of the special edition podcast, we get started with first, and as usual, that is brought to everyone by the great folks at Touring Plans, Lynn Testa and the fine folks over there at touringplans.com. Anything that anybody needs related to Disneyland, Disney World, Disney Cruises, if Disney pops into your head, one of the theme parks or the boats or whatnot, you should be going to Touring Plans first. And I set you up there to tee it out of the park the rest of the way with why people should go to touringplans.com, Alex.
It's like the home run derby the Steelers had last night with Eli Heidenreich winning that. And Touring Plans uses math and science to help families save time and money at theme parks like Walt Disney World and Disneyland. You can find a crowd calendar showing the best days to visit each park, step-by-step plans to avoid standing hours and hours waiting in those lines, views from every hotel room, and big discounts on those theme park tickets, which is especially important because it feels like prices rise every single year. So, if you're planning a trip to Disney sometime later this year, maybe early 2027, whenever, this is the team you want to work with. Reach out to touringplans.com. A link is at the top of the page in today's training camp notes.
Yeah, I guess you could call them the Steelers Depot of Disney, right?
Some were saying that. You're saying that.
Either that or we are the Touring Plans of the Steelers. All right, Alex, thanks again to Lynn Testa and the fine folks over there. Let us get into the housekeeping portion of the podcast, and there are no transactions on Sunday. We had several names that we went over yesterday that you're going to be paying attention to see if they were in pads. So give us the long list of who practiced, who didn't practice, who maybe got dinged up in practice, and what the overall health of this team looks like right now.
Not practicing today, wide receiver Brandon Smith. There was a sleeve on his right leg, so I assume that's the injury that he suffered. He pulled a muscle running on a punt during the Packers game. DK Metcalf remains out. Michael Pittman Jr. remains out with a right leg hamstring injury. Maxie Honachor out, Sebastian Joseph Day, Jaquan Brisker, Israel Mukwamu, Brandon Eccles all remain out. Pittman did some light jogging and stretching today, so that was a positive, albeit a small sign in his return, so we'd not expect him back for a little while longer, but there's something there at least with Michael Pittman. A really spirited day for the Pup guys, especially Jalen Ramsey and Joey Porter Jr. Ramsey was out there for most of practice doing basically full-on drills on the side, still remaining on active PUP, but running, cutting, catching passes like a DB drill. So Couldn't tell you exactly when he's going to come back, but certainly seems like he's getting fairly close and is making really good progress. Caden Weegan returned for practice, which was good after yesterday's kind of scare where he did not work in a very light and limited session. Stephen Jones continues to dress and was part of team in the two-spot walkthrough period, but did not go through the more lively contact team periods. In terms of in-practice injuries, Jennings Dunker was getting checked out by the head trainer very late in practice. He looked visibly okay. Trainer was holding up both of his arms to sort of test resistance, and so he did not finish practice. He did go through a very light helmetless walkthrough Mike McCarthy put all the rookies through after practice. So we'll check the status on Dunker tomorrow. Hopefully he's good to go because the Lions along the offensive line are getting pretty darn thin. Also, Steve Skarnecchia continues to be absent due to some unknown medical situation.
All right, we got 4 weeks from today that the Steelers will play the Falcons in week 1 there. So a lot of time to get some of these guys healthy, but obviously not a lot of time for some of these guys that are roster hopefuls, and obviously too some of these younger guys that you'd really like to see get work. Maxi Ionichur, definitely one of those guys. And then you look definitely what's going on with Sebastian Joseph Day. You hope to get him a little bit of burn during the preseason. We haven't seen Michael Pittman or DK Metcalf yet, and Eccles still dealing with a little something there on top of it. So yeah, we'll have to keep our fingers crossed. Obviously, some of these guys that you just rattled off aren't going to play Friday, but how many of them won't play is yet to be determined. And once again, there's no workouts or anything today or tryouts, and we'll see if that carries on over. Now, look, it's still got a long ways to go until Friday here, but hopefully some of these guys can start getting to work soon, and that includes some of these PUP guys. But we said at the start of camp we didn't expect Jalen Ramsey to make an appearance out there at Saint Vincent College. That's going to probably be the case there. Joey Porter Jr., it's hard to believe that back, if indeed that was the issue, still acting up. That's all contract related. And Dante Kent, you would think there's a guy that's got to be motivated to get back on the field. Will he be able to do that here in next week or so? So we'll keep everybody posted on that. But the list, as it normally does at this time of training camp, is a little bit on the lengthy side. So we'll just see if we can get these guys back.
Well said. Should also mention Deshaun Elliott had, I think, his most reps today he's had of all the training camp. He worked in some of the more lively team periods, which was good. Maybe not 100% of the reps, but getting pretty close to that. So that's a really good note for him to end his training camp on.
All right, Alex, as we get into recapping what you observed on Sunday at Saint Vincent College, been a lot of sloppy practices, I think, even dating back to the Saturday Night Lights, and maybe even like the practice before. I can't remember at this point. Was this a little bit more spirited, more complete, kind of positive practice overall, or was there still a level of sloppiness to it?
For the offense or across the board?
Dealer's choice. Answer that how you wish.
Offensively, there was some ebb and flow where there were some positive plays. There still was some sloppiness, some mental mistakes, some fumbles, but I've seen worse, I guess. I think maybe there's a bit of an upswing in terms of buttoning up, but there's still certainly some things to work on. There was one botched exchange between Rudolph and Frazier today. Warren had a fumble. We'll talk about Jeremy Bernard and some of the mental mistakes that he appeared to show. So still a work in progress here.
All right, and I think Mike McCarthy said this was the final portion of the install that they had to get done today. If I'm understanding correct, it's a lot of goal line stuff today.
A lot of red zone, some high red zone, but also some lower red zone goal line type of stuff. So yeah, it was a spirited day. It was a physical day, and the big story in terms of that aspect is the big skirmish that broke out. And often when reporters talk about training camp fights and skirmishes, they're pretty minor. This one was a larger scale, kind of a baseball term, benches clearing, where everyone came over, and we'll talk about it some more, I'm sure, throughout the podcast. But that was a true fight, you could call it today. So that got pretty intense towards the end of practice.
All right. So just to clarify, we've got fight, brouhaha, and a skirmish. So this was more in the fight territory, or
yeah, there were DEFCON levels to this thing, and this one was near the top.
All right. I imagine they'll patch that all up in the once they get off the field and all like that there. But yeah, first kind of major one that we've talked about all training camp here. All right, let's go position group by position group. Tell me about the quarterbacks today.
Think it was a good day across the board. Pretty clean in terms of no interceptions that I can recall. In terms of the team period, there was 1 in 7 on 7. Aller threw it. I think Roman Wilson slipped. Jameson picked it off, but wouldn't blame Aller too much for that. Will Howard made some accurate throws off platform, off his back foot. Aaron Rodgers got things started with a great throw down the slot to Roman Wilson, first play of that Franco period, whenever the Monday night theme music comes on. Thought Mason Rudolph had a really good day. I know I have not talked about Rudolph too much because you just kind of expect him to look good in a training camp setting for a veteran like him, but he was consistent, hitting Tunyon for a good gain, hitting Lou Nichols for a touchdown in a goal line situation, just completed the vast majority of his passes today. So a nice, consistent day, which describes his camp for Mason Rudolph.
I know it's kind of hard to do, especially with your mind probably being clouded by the tape from the preseason game the other night. But have you felt like you've seen progression in those couple of young quarterbacks, so at least when it comes to training camp?
Yeah, it's hard to necessarily think back right now. I'll try to have a recap of my thoughts later on, but I think that's probably fair and expected for any young quarterback. Also, I should note, I don't have a lot on Aller's day in terms of him throwing the football, but he's got a really effective hard count. The way he gets guys and defenses to flinch and jump and sort of tip their hand for a rookie to come out with a really loud, great hard count like that is pretty impressive.
I think I noted that coming out of the TV tape the other night when and partial of the all 22 that we watched that we talked about the other day there is that it seemed like he really was trying to focus on some cadence aspects, particularly when he was under center in that game. So look, he's learning from they're all learning from the master and Aaron Rodgers. So you would hope some of that would trickle down to these quarterbacks on it. It sounds like it is there. All right. Running backs, you posted the during the practice on Twitter the rotation of the running backs. Go.
It went Jalen Warren / Rico Dowdle. Warren got the first carry, but whenever it snaked back around to the starters, Dowdle got it so you can put it in either order. And then it was Travis Homer, Lou Nichols, Eli Heidenreich, and then Caleb Johnson last on that list. And when I tweeted that got plenty of attention for Johnson's spot in the running. He's seemingly behind Heidenreich now, so I think the writing is getting pretty clear on the wall for Caleb Johnson and his future or lack thereof in Pittsburgh.
He's fixing to have a meeting with the two Bobs, isn't he?
Looking like that, yeah.
Didn't get a lot of burn in that first preseason game. We talked about that the other day. It's not looking great for him, and I tell you, and we heard what Mike McCarthy talk about Homer, and they know what Homer is. They know he can be a 4-down player if it ran into that. More specifically, he can definitely be a 4th-down player. We've seen that, and it seems like he's kind of really he's been on the inside looking outside and looks kind of well established inside the bubble at this point. So with him being a known commodity, and I don't know how much work, if any, Rico Dowdle and Jalen Warren will get on against the Jets on Friday and all. I'm all up for assuming he's healthy. Eli Heidenreich, I would, not that it would even the best game for him would substantially help his odds, but I would try to give Eli Heidenreich as much burn as I can all over the field, whether it be some in the slot as a pass catcher, in the backfield, obviously on special teams. I would like to see him get as much burn as possible against the Jets. Would you agree with that hope?
Sure. I mean, I'm all for getting him plenty of time. Of course, you want to see a lot of Lou Nichols and Travis Homer and get a feel for those guys with this coaching staff. But Heidenreich got, 9 carries, and I forget exactly how many snaps he had, probably 15 or so, despite barely practicing that week leading up to the Packers game. So with a full week of work in and some more time, you think he'll be open to absorbing even more. So, yeah, I mean, you're certainly going to see Heidenreich plenty these next 2 preseason games.
Even as impressive as Lou Nichols has been and kind of working his way up through this thing, though, still going to be tough for him to get a roster spot potentially, right?
Yeah, I think this thing's still tracking towards practice squad. Could that change? It could. Still some runway left, but just with some of the time missed and Homer being an established vet and Lou Nichols having a nice camp too. Heidenreich really tough to find those touches early on in training camp and then missed a couple days with his injury. Practice squad still looks like the likely outcome.
All right, and Travis Homer, I'm not sure if he already knew Landon Roberts prior to Roberts coming back to Pittsburgh and all, but he did get reacquainted with him, or he did meet him today, right?
Yeah, Roberts throwing around the shoulder and reminding people how Landon Roberts plays, and it's even though non-tackling session, he's still going to bring a lot of physicality. Should mention too one other running back note: Jalen Warren, a fumble today. T.J. Watt punched it out, and Watt's so good at punching the ball out when running backs are wrapped up. And I got to count exactly how many it is, but we're up to 3-4 fumbles for Warren in training camp, and that was an issue for him early in his career. New coaching staff comes in for a coach that obviously is very familiar with Rico Dowdle, like Mike McCarthy. The more Warren fumbles, the more that the scale is going to tip towards Rico Dowdle. Now, Warren's still going to play and still can have some great value to this team. I love the way that Warren plays and runs, but ball security is job security, and the more he fumbles, the worse that's going to be for him.
All right, let's go to the wide receivers now. Obviously, no DK Metcalf, no Michael Pittman Jr., Brandon Johnson, sideline. What else you got?
I mean, the big thing here is Jeremy Bernard, and he played a heck of a game. I mean, he really kind of turned into that game when the lights came on against Green Bay. But man, so many mental mistakes, and that's really going to hold him back. And that's common for a lot of rookies in a high pressure situation, playing with a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. But at least by my count, 3 mental mistakes today. One on a slant route, didn't get his head around. Rodgers threw it to him, kind of goal line work, pass incomplete, a false start. He's false started maybe a half dozen times in training camp across team periods already. And then the final play, they ran first and goal from the 2, a 2-point play. It's a little kind of funky read option, but it's not really a read. Aaron's not going to run with the football, but sort of play fake, rolls left. Rodgers with an underhand flip to Bernard, working kind of really reduced split left side. Point is, Bernard never gets his head around, never finds the football. The flip hits the ground. Defense wins. Cam Hayward's hopping around in Rodgers' face, celebrating, and Rodgers just throws his hands up in the air when Bernard did not get his head around, getting a lot of those mental mistakes that is going to really curtail Bernard's year one value if Rodgers does not trust him to do what his assignment is or get a false start on a Rodgers hard count, which has happened multiple times where it's going to be hard to gain that trust if he keeps making these mistakes that are going to just aggravate the heck out of Aaron Rodgers, and rightfully so.
Brandon Johnson obviously banged up before that happened. Brandon Smith. I don't know why I'm mixing him up with the Brandon Johnson. Brandon Smith was obviously seemed to be on course to be practice squad guy prior to the injury. We'll see how long that sidelines him. Once again, we got 4 weeks to go before the season starts. But the only thing I think about 2 weeks from today is when they got it trimmed to 53, I think. But is Max Hurlman the other best wide receiver unlikely to make the 53?
Who is likely to then make the practice squad? Yeah, right. I think that's how you would frame Hurlman. He's had a nice camp, had a good preseason game. Even Angelico made sure to give him a shout out when talking about Bernard catch and run that he had against Green Bay. Angelico giving Hurlman a little spotlight too. So practice squad looks highly likely for Max Hurlman.
All right, beyond Smith and Hurlman, who would be the next one on the list, if any, or are they all just kind of crowded together at that point?
Yeah, they're pretty jumbled together. Levi once had a nice one-handed catch underneath today. Yeah, it's going to just probably remain to be seen based on how these next couple of games go, who can help out on teams. I don't know if there's any super standouts there in return game or coverage team. Joaquin Davis, a nice catch behind him today. He's been pretty quiet throughout training camp. So it's pretty bunched up with everyone kind of swimming in similar waters behind Hurlman, who's really capitalized on the snaps that are now available with Brandon Smith.
Okay.
Not practicing.
All right. Tight ends. This thing has become clearer, by the day, and really, by the time that game the other night got over with there. And I'm throwing Riley Nowakowski obviously in that as well too. Talk to me about the tight ends today. And I think you said you saw kind of a full house backfield too, didn't you?
Yeah, that was interesting. It wasn't true full house with 3 in the backfield, or 4, I should say, in the backfield. There were 3 in the backfield with 2 tight ends, so Nowakowski or Tunyon, or in one team period, Darnell Washington, and Nowakowski with a deep running back, Lou Nichols, or just a true running back, and had some inside runs off of that with 2 lead blockers. And so that was an interesting wrinkle. You could see that throughout the season, part of the install stuff. New plays are still putting in the playbook or repping from the playbook today. Been just quiet for Darnell Washington. I'm sure people are wondering what his camp has been like. It's not been bad in the sense he's doing anything objectively wrong, just not seeing the ball a lot, more blocking emphasis and focus. Frymuth certainly far and away the number one target in terms of him and Washington in the past game. And Tunyon's had a lot of receptions too from these young quarterbacks, and had one from even Mason Rudolph today for a good gain over the middle. So just not a lot of action for Washington.
All right, who is the best prospect to be practice squad tight end at this point? How's Lance Mason coming along since his arrival?
I mean, he's gotten some work and reps, but not a whole lot to really note there. He was the guy that first pushed back on Robert Spears Jennings that led to that big brawl, but that's not really an evaluation note. I mean, it's sort of like the receivers. It's pretty jumbled up with Jaheim Bell and Lake McCree. I mean, I guess Bell, because he's a little versatile, he can play a little bit of fullback, H-back, and played a little bit in the NFL with the Patriots his rookie year, so maybe Bell would have the edge, but like I said, with receiver, it applies to tight end. These next 2 preseason games will probably determine who's going to capture those practice squad spots.
All right, offensive line, and before we get your report on them, just some clarification coming out of some of the talk after the game the other night. Brock Hoffman did indeed play some center in that game. After all, I had missed that. I know we had talked about that the other day. So Brock Hoffman played all 3 interior spots in that game. Now he came in. His center reps were after. Well, actually, it went Ryan McCollum, then Hoffman. I think McCollum came back in for a little bit at center before giving way to Gregory Crippen there. But I think you saw a little bit of a development as to Hoffman getting a little bit more work at center during the training camp practice today, right?
Yeah, I would say he's steadily increased his center work throughout training camp, from very little initially to seeing now some team reps. This was during the 2-spot walkthrough period where Ryan McCollum was on the other field, and so they're just limited options to work with, but still notable for Hoffman to get those reps. And so you've still seen a lot of McCollum. I'd still call him the number 2 center even during today, but we're seeing just Hoffman get that additional work in, which obviously has got a deep background at center from his time in Dallas, but we talk about that final offensive line spot. Hoffman, you expect to make the team. Will McCollum be the 10th and be the true number 2 center? I think it depends a little bit on how much center work Hoffman is getting throughout training camp, and we're seeing it increase in preseason action for a series and now during today's practice.
The Lions got some issues at center right now with who is it? Robert Mays, I think was
Cade
there.
Mays.
Okay, yeah, Cade Mays went down. Uh, I wonder if McCollum, if he gets enough showing and shows well from here on out during the preseason, wonder if there's a potential maybe flipping him for a 6th or 7th round pick around cut down time.
You never rule it out. Offensive linemen always have value and are scarce. Would he be subject to waivers if he was cut?
Um,
He should be considered vested. I'm just trying to think about.
I think he's vested now, Andy. So I would think it would be a contract. Let me see if he's got enough. Go ahead and talk more about some of the offensive line there, and I'll look up to see his vested years here.
Yeah, that was
credited.
That was the big note on the offensive line, was Hoffman's work at center and O-line, D-line. I thought Fautanu had a couple good reps. Dylan Cook a couple good reps against TJ Watt. Hoffman Anderson, I thought, held their own. Frazier had his hands full with Cam Hayward and Y.A. Black on some of those bull rushes, but no major takeaway there from O-line, D-line, super positive or super negative in terms of that. The lines are just getting thin. Like I said, with Stephen Jones not working full and Ihanichor still out and never replaced Lorenzo Thompson. I mean, they're probably down to, 10, 11 guys working full, which sounds like a lot, but for training camp, it's not that many with a preseason game coming up. And with Dunker getting dinged, will they look to add right before the preseason game against the Jets? We'll see. So I'll be watching the injury and the health of that group before the preseason game.
All right, let's see. McCollum, no, he is not he's only got 3 credited seasons in at this point, so he would be a waiving
Okay.
situation there. I'm pretty sure on that.
Yeah,
So
I could see some interest even on a trade. It's possible because offensive linemen have that value. Kendrick Green got traded for, goodness sake, but I could certainly see a waiver claim situation too.
yeah, I mean, well, look, I mean, if you put it out there early before cut down date, you see it all the time at near the final cut down. Some of the first reports, Steelers are going to waive so and so, and then they, or any team, and then they work out a trade by the end of the day there because teams don't want to have to. It'd be one thing, and I think that you bring up an important point about termination versus waiving, because if he has to go through waivers, then any team could just claim him off waivers. So that might be. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. If Ryan McCollum's not going to be part of this plan here, and if there's a team or two out there potentially looking for a center because of an injury or even a backup center, he has played in the NFL, and he actually played for the Lions organization
True.
prior to. So they've
Was that with Dan Campbell? Was that with the current regime? Do we know that was
I
in
don't.
2022?
When was it? I don't
I'd
remember
have to
right
get
off
all my dates
top of
aligned.
my head here. I think it was 2021 with him
Okay. And
in Detroit.
Campbell got hired in 2021. He was practice. Well, he played like 100 snaps that year for Detroit, didn't he?
Hmm.
He had some injuries, so yeah, we'll keep an eye on it. It's certainly something. We're not ones to talk about, oh, everybody's going to get claimed.
Right.
Most guys pass through waivers, but if you look at where a lot of claims come from, it's positions of scarcity and high value, cornerback, offensive line. I want to try to dig into that. I actually wrote it down in my notes today to try to look at what positions are most claimed. Maybe it's already published somewhere, but I know offensive line is certainly one and corner is probably another.
All right. What else? Anything else on the offensive line before we jump over to the defensive side?
No, I think that covers it pretty well. Just going to check on Dunker status for tomorrow.
All right. What do you have on the defensive line for today?
Derek Carmen with some pressures and looked good in O-line, D-line, had a really nice long arm to swim against Brock Hoffman in one of their one-on-one. I think it was Hoffman. Let me double check that, make sure I'm not getting the player wrong. Yeah, it was against Brock Hoffman. So that was good. More nose tackle work for Keanu Benton today. We'll talk about that more, I'm sure, for the main show. Benton's contract, what that means, the fit, and how all the pieces work between him and Wyatt Black and Kim Haywood and Derek Carmen. But Benton just showing the active hands, the twitch was the word that Mike McCarthy used, which is really appropriate for a guy like Keanu Benton. And Gabe Rubio continues to look good in some of the run period sessions.
Good, good. So now all we need to do is get Sebastian Joseph Day back on the field here.
There you go.
All right, and Otomewo, you consider him outside the bubble or inside the bubble right now?
I would say outside the bubble.
Okay. And look, the numbers game and specifically the quarterback situation might make a difference. And really, I started to play around with my worksheet for my roster prediction coming out before the game. I think I'm probably going to release that on either Thursday or Friday morning there. It might come down, especially if they do decide to keep 4 quarterbacks here, is how many offensive linemen or how many defensive linemen, because it's starting to seal itself up. It feels like at a lot of these other position groups here at this point here. So, yeah, it'd be nice to get Sebastian Joseph Day healthy because that's some nice depth on a defensive line there. All right, I don't imagine you have too much about the outside linebackers today.
No, not too terribly much. Nick Herbig continuing to get work in some of that 3 outside linebacker package. Herbig playing off ball next to Peyton Wilson and Patrick Queen with Watt Highsmith on the field. Herbig had a breakup in goal line on a pass intended for tight end Jaheim Bell. So continuing to see this team creatively use Herbig in that 3 outside linebacker package. That's really my big takeaway today.
All right, Watt had a swat too, right?
Yeah, Rodgers tried to throw a little bubble to the right side, and Watt unblocked, raced in, and got both hands on it, almost picked it off. So typical TJ Watt stuff there.
All right, inside linebacker. You said Peyton Wilson was all over the place today.
Yeah, I thought he was really active in the run period, chasing a toss to Dowdle. Just seemed like he was always first guy in for a tag. Bruner pretty active. Holcomb a good stick on Homer and goal line. I thought a nice active day for the inside backers. Of course, Roberts stumping and hitting people around, which is classical Landon Roberts stuff there. So yeah, good day for the group. Similar to Caleb Johnson, Malik Harrison, with now Roberts in team period. I didn't see Harrison take a snap in team today. He may have, and I missed it, but I saw Jacoby Windman getting time. He recovered a fumble today. I saw 39 on the sidelines quite a bit. So you talk about writing on the wall and two bobs and all those things. The same applies for Malik Harrison as it does Caleb Johnson.
All right, so Landon Roberts didn't forget his keys to the ignition, then, right? And
For sure.
he fired it right on up there for that. I guess officially that is his second practice, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he practiced in yesterday's 45-minute walkthrough,
Right.
if you could even call that a practice, but today was the first, padded practice.
All right. Let's see. What do we got? How about the corners today? Deshaun Jameson.
Yeah, I thought a couple of unheralded corners made some plays. Jameson with two breakups. Slaughter, I thought, had some good coverage. He broke up at least one throw, maybe two. I know that he got on the Rogers to Wilson first pass, but that was a great ball and a great track by Roman Wilson, so it's hard to fault Slaughter too much for that. So you got a couple of guys that can play inside, outside. They're both playing slot. They're both playing outside with lines getting thin at slot corner with no Ramsey and no Kent and Eccles. So I think those guys made some plays today.
All right, a lot of guys missing time, obviously still in the secondary at this point here. So you would expect a lot of those younger guys to get a lot of burn in these final two preseason games. Safety, what do you have there? Has Jack Henderson really? Has it been? How would you rate Henderson's camp so far?
Not the dark horse sleeper guy that we thought. And reps of, even though they've had a lot of injuries there, he's lost a bit of time with Elliott working back and them signing a couple of veterans. So it's been pretty nondescript. The script safety can be tough to evaluate because often the play just doesn't go their way. But he's not jumped out in my notes too much, and so it's probably looking like just a straight cut for Jack Henderson.
All right, say what's happened with Castro?
I mean, I think he's been around the ball when he can be. He's pretty active against the run, downhill hitter. Just he's behind Spears Jennings. He's not going to make it over Spears Jennings, and doesn't have the experience that a Rayshon Jenkins does. And so it just feels like he's not getting the personal protector work I thought he might, that he was getting in camp last year. It's going to other people like Travis Homer. So practice squad is possible for Castro, but it just has not kind of been the jump that I thought it might be in his second year with the team.
All right. Let's see. Any updates on maybe guys like Daryl Porter and you said McQuamu was sidelined, right?
Yeah, he's got a right leg issue. It's above the ankle, below the knee. He had it taped up or wrapped, so he did not work today. And so Jenkins is working first team. A lot of Jenkins and Elliott, a little bit of Jenkins and Spears Jennings too, as Elliott's not 100% participation, but on the upswing there. And Brisker, of course, still being out. Yeah, Porter, not a whole lot of left cornerback work. He's kind of been in tandem with Timon Lynham, who's also a couple of plays, but not a whole lot to note there with him. I thought Devon Boykins, I thought he had a good preseason game. We'll talk about that on the full show. He's playing slot, he's playing safety, so some versatility with him. So maybe he's going to fight for a practice squad spot.
All right. If McQuamu can get himself back healthy, is he kind of feels like the leader in the clubhouse for practice squad spot?
For practice squad, I let's just see. He hasn't got to play a whole lot in Pittsburgh yet. I mean, in terms of 53 is kind of where my mindset's right now. It's Jenkins because he's healthy and available, and I think the energy that he brings is really positive. So,
Okay.
I mean, it just kind of the safety backup stuff will probably continue to sort itself out the rest of the way.
All right. Anything on special teams that need to be cleaned up?
Not much. They worked kick return today. A lot of usual suspects. Weegan was back. He worked full, like I said earlier, so that was really good to see. You had Roman Wilson, Caleb Johnson, Hurlman, Deshaun James, and Jalen Warren also getting some reps. He was a returner last year. I think the goal is to not have to use him this year, but that's possible. And if Dowdle is going to end up kind of being the lead back, then maybe Warren does end up getting some looks at on the kick return game. So stay tuned for that.
All right, we haven't done this in a while. What is and I don't think we've done it all throughout camp. What is the best thing you saw today, Alex Kozora?
Probably the first snap of team was Rogers ripping that slot fade to Roman Wilson. That's a great throw and just great track by Wilson. It's one of those throws the defender just cannot make a play on. Just no way to defend it. So I think that was probably. Are there more videos? I feel like the videos have slowed down with camp being later and rain and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So have you seen video? Is that
no?
video floating out there?
I have not
Okay.
seen it. No.
Yeah. So I think the first play was best play.
All right. Okay, Alex, goalie washer there in Western PA this afternoon. What is the prospects for tomorrow? And have you any early word on what you think's going to do weather-wise?
Let's check the forecast. We're looking at tomorrow, 75% chance, little
Mm.
storm emoji, but it looks like currently it's going to hold off the worst of the weather until the afternoon, 2, 3, 4 o'clock. And so if that tracks, they should be okay. It'll be interesting because McCarthy called tomorrow, Monday, a competition day. The installs are done. So I'm curious to kind of see, might be the most evaluation they're going to have from that hat because all the plays are in there and they're just kind of repping it now. So I'm curious to see what the last day of practice and training camp looks like, and hopefully the weather should be forgiving enough, but always subject to change. So we'll see.
All right. Hopefully you'll be able to get out there and observe a full practice in what is scheduled to be the final training camp practice open to the public for 2026. All right, Alex, good job. You and I will be getting back together here in a couple hours to record the Monday morning version of the Terrible Podcast. We've got a lot to talk about too. So we won't be recapping any training camp stuff, I don't think. Maybe bits and pieces here and there, but we've got a lot of other things to talk about when it comes to that. So I guess in the meantime, as usual, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. And as usual, if you want an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, click on the ad-free button and follow the directions that way. So that'll wrap it up for this special edition. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast, another special edition of the Terrible Podcast, Pittsburgh Steelers Training Camp 2026 with Dave and Alex.